Please take a seat, take a seat, take a seat. I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank the legendary Neringa for putting the show together, bringing all us together in this room, and I'm thankful being here as well. So what are we going to talk about today? You might have seen these headlines if you are in the tech field. You might have seen these headlines that blockchain projects are getting hacked. We're not talking about tens of thousands, we're talking about tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars being lost in these projects, and that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. But more about these headlines later. How many of you are active within the cryptocurrency space? How many of you own cryptocurrency? Raise of hands. Quite a few people, quite a few people. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two largest cryptocurrencies currently when it comes to market cap. And this whole cryptocurrency revolution we see currently started back in 2008 with the introduction of Bitcoin. And what started as a small movement on the internet, where only techie people, programmer people were doing these kinds of projects and experimenting with cryptocurrencies, is now growing to a global scale. Whenever I travel and educate organizations, companies, financial institutions about this new field, I realize that this is getting bigger and bigger. And now the traditional industry, the traditional finance are getting into this field, and they are interested. They are eager to learn, and they want to understand this technology. So cryptocurrencies are here to stay for sure. And it's not only about the institutions. It's not only about the business aspect of these things that attract people. My personal view is that this field is so hot because it's a combination of three very, very interesting topics. Number one, technology. Of course, the blockchain is an entirely new paradigm. For the first time ever, we can transfer value to each other on the internet. So the technology is a huge part of it all, and this is what attracts tech people like us. But then we have the society part of things. This is also a political movement. A lot of the original people were very motivated by politics and ideology as well. And also it's about economy, how the economic paradigm is shifting from traditional finance to crypto finance going forward. We are entering internet of money, where money becomes programmable and money is also on the internet. And you might be thinking that, right, we've been having this internet money for a long time with banking, online banking, but this is about permissionless internet of money. Anyone can start programming money now that we have the blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of these cryptocurrencies. However, what do you think happens when you take something as money, you make it programmable, and you add internet to it? What happens? This happens. Very much like with IoT, you had a very perfect, secure light bulb, you connect it to the internet, and now you have light bulbs and refrigerators trying to attack your organization from within. Whenever we add the programmability to something, whenever we add internet to something, it opens up many possibilities, but it also comes with a lot of responsibilities as well. And so this new paradigm, internet of money, in my view, will help millions of people to come out of poverty. Why? By fighting hyperinflation, corruption, and increasing financial inclusion. But at the same time, we have these huge issues currently, because there are no real best practices, and we're all new in this field of internet of money. So who am I? My name is Ivan, and as the flag fabulously indicates, I'm from Sweden, and I'm a programmer. Programming has been my passion since I was 9 years old. And I worked at different companies. I worked at, for example, Ericsson. You might recognize Sony Ericsson. We were huge in the phone business, together with our Finnish friends from Nokia, before Steve Jobs came along. But I'm also, my current business currently is blockchain. I run the YouTube channel, Ivan on Tech, where I educate people about the technicalities of blockchain projects. And I also travel all around the globe talking about blockchain and educating companies, organizations, and governments about this new field. My partners and I are also starting our new project called Stockholm Blockchain, where we will invest in blockchain startups, in blockchain ventures, and also educate organizations, financial institutions, governments about this new field. So enough about me. How many know this man? How many of you recognize this man? So quite a few, quite a few. And we have to realize that Bitcoin, it is a peer-to-peer cash payment system. That is correct. But we also need to keep in mind that Bitcoin has its own programming language. It's called script. By design, script is a very dumb stack-based programming language. It is so by design. But so Vitalik, what he was thinking is, guys, let's add a Turing-complete, fully-fledged programming language to Bitcoin. But he didn't get much support. That idea didn't really grow in the Bitcoin community. So Vitalik said, I'm going to start my own project, and that is how Ethereum was born. So currently we have Ethereum, which is this platform for decentralized applications on which you and I can program so-called smart contracts and build our own applications that will run in this peer-to-peer decentralized manner without any central server, central entity in the middle. And this is where we see this huge growth currently in cryptocurrencies. Smart contracts are really hot. Many people are raising money using smart contracts. And this paradigm has really grown in the last couple of years. So how do we program these smart contracts? Well, different platforms have different programming languages. But because this talk is mainly about Ethereum, because many of these hacks happen on Ethereum, these huge ones, we're going to talk about Solidity, which is the programming language of Ethereum. And if you are familiar with JavaScript, I think Solidity will be easy for you to learn, because the syntax of Solidity is very like JavaScript. So we use Solidity to build smart contracts. And the smart contract can look like this. So if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, you might see this as a class. So we have a contract, and we have some functions that do different things. And this contract lives on the blockchain. This little program in itself lives on the blockchain. Anyone can interact with it, and this is how we program these smart contracts. And as you can recognize, it is very much like JavaScript. Also, there is a huge demand for Solidity developers. Just yesterday, I organized a meetup for my subscribers, and it's just mind-blowing how many people are starting blockchain startups. They're trying to do some kind of idea on the blockchain, and there are not many developers currently in this field. So this quote is very interesting from one of the developers on the DAO, which was a big project. And so if you're interested, if you don't like your job, take a look at Solidity. And so the whole idea is that these contracts, these apps that are on the blockchain, the whole idea is that they should be immutable. It's not like you have a website and there is some bug and you can just hotfix it and it works. Fixing things on the blockchain, on Ethereum, updating these smart contracts is difficult, because the whole idea is that they should be immutable. And to really understand the need of this immutability, what we can do is to think about a simple smart contract together. So smart contracts are all about eliminating middlemen. So let's imagine that you're my parents, and I'm your child, and you want me to get your money when you die. So we have an inheritance situation here. We can solve it currently by going to an escrow and having a middleman in between, solving this issue, and relying on that middleman so that the middleman keeps track of when you die. But we can also do it without the middleman on the blockchain by creating a smart contract which will take your money, you deposit your money in the smart contract. Smart contracts can hold money. Now we have programs that can hold money, and we can together program it in a way that each year you have to log into that smart contract to make it know that you're still alive. And if you don't log in for 2 years, I will get your money. So this is an example of very simple smart contracts. And here you can see why smart contracts need to be immutable, because if I can update the smart contract and change the logic in the smart contract, I can basically withdraw your money before you're dead, because I was able to change the logic of that contract. So the whole idea with smart contracts is that they should be immutable, meaning that when we're talking about building these contracts, we need to think about like we're building a house. We cannot easily go and change things. This needs to be carefully engineered and carefully thought through before we actually start building. So it's a bit different mindset compared to when you're building a mobile app or a web app, because these things are immutable, they're hard to change, and it is by design. So therefore, we cannot really be lean and build MVPs. We cannot hack a weekend and then we publish some smart contracts and attract a lot of money and then we get hacked. So being lean, creating MVPs is great in the traditional programming, but when it comes to smart contracts, when it comes to blockchain, everything needs to be thought through, because we're dealing with money and we're dealing with tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. How many of you have heard about this story? About a new person in the company deleting the whole database in production. Well, now we're going to start talking about these hacks and how they happened. So this has nothing to do with the blockchain. And I thought this was interesting because a new person came into the company, accidentally deleted the whole production database, basically deleting the company from existence. But we have our own such case, which happened just a few days ago, which resulted in $300 million locked up, where someone accidentally nuked a library on Ethereum. And so this is the first hack we're going to discuss, this 300 million accidental nuking of a library. So on Ethereum, when we're building these contracts, they can reference other contracts. So in that way, we have libraries, we have functionality being located in different places. And we need to understand the concept of wallets, because this is central to this particular event. When we have a wallet, we have a program that runs on the blockchain, and it holds your funds. But this program references some kind of libraries. It doesn't have all the functionality it needs inside of its internal logic. So wallets, they reference other contracts, and they use them as libraries. And so what do you think happens when such a library disappears? Well, the wallets can no longer function. And there is a particular wallet called Parity, which is extremely, extremely popular. And it had its library nuked, so to speak. And this happened just a few days ago, a week ago or so. This little issue appeared on GitHub, on Parity's GitHub, when someone just said that I accidentally killed your library without really understanding the impact of that event. This continued on Gitter, the same person asking, is this a serious issue? Also, still not understanding the whole impact of those events. And this continued further. And so the whole idea with this issue is that this person was able to make him or herself the owner of that library. And as the owner, you can basically kill the library and remove it from existence. So there was a flaw in the deployment of that library, which made it possible for a random person to make themselves the owner, and by doing that, they were able to destroy it, take it out of existence, meaning that all the wallets that used that library no longer could function. And this is how $300 million are now locked in these wallets. And I mean, there are ways to fix it. They are not easy. If you're interested, we can talk after the session, but this is fixable. However, it's extremely hard to fix, because the whole idea is that these contracts are immutable. And when we're building contracts, we're building houses, so it's not easy thing to fix. And the question is, of course, whose fault is it? Because the person was able to interact with the contract in a perfectly normal way. There was an issue with the deployment. So when we're entering this Internet of money paradigm and we're dealing with these huge amounts, we're facing new dilemmas and new questions. For example, whose fault is this? Is it the developers? Not really, because in the license it said that they are not responsible. Is it the users who weren't careful enough when choosing a wallet? Or is it this random person who accidentally nuked the library? And of course, when we say accidentally, we do not know the clear intentions of that person. It could be the case that it's accidental, but it could also be the case that they were trying to poke and trying to withdraw money somehow from the smart contract and accidentally froze everyone's funds. So the intentions are not clear, and we are facing new questions and new dilemmas when we're entering this field. Our next hack, so here we will take a look at the code as well. Our next hack is a very significant hack in the history of Ethereum, of this decentralized platform for decentralized applications. Because this hack resulted in a split of the community, so now we have Ethereum project, and we also have Ethereum Classic. The amount of dollars is a bit lower, but the significance of this hack is huge. So, I will give you some context. The DAO, how did it happen? Basically, the DAO was this project on the blockchain, and they raised money to their project by selling their tokens and by receiving Ether as payment. Then they had a smart contract, a little program, as we saw earlier, that held these funds on the blockchain. So they had a smart contract. However, there was a vulnerability in that smart contract that let anyone to recursively drain that contract of money. And we're going to take a look at exactly how that happened. But so the whole idea is that there is this recursive vulnerability there is a potential of a recursive vulnerability in the smart contracts. So how did it happen? Let's take a look. So this is pseudocode. This is not actually valid Solidity code. But we have this function called withdraw that people can call in order to withdraw their funds from the contract. And the whole idea is that when I call withdraw, I shouldn't be able to take out more than I own, than I have in that contract. So how does the contract know how much I have inside, how much money I have inside? Well, it has a map. It has a map called balances. And when I call the smart contract, the contract fetches the amount by querying balances with my address. So whenever someone calls a function in a smart contract, the function knows your address. It is the sender. So the function always knows who calls them. So it fetches the amount, it pays out the amount, and it sets my balance to 0. So it looks fine. If you're not familiar with how blockchain works, with how smart contracts on Ethereum work, this might look completely fine. However, the vulnerability is in these few lines of code. Because we have to realize when we're coding on the blockchain that sometimes different methods change the control flow. And for example, when we do payout, this gives the wallet that receives the payment a possibility, an opportunity to run its own code. So when payout happens, the wallet can run its own code, meaning that the wallet in turn can call withdraw again. And the amount will be fetched again, and the payout will happen again, and the payout will call withdraw. So this line is never reached, meaning that in this recursive way, the hacker was able to drain the contract of $53 million. And of course, a simple fix is just to switch those lines so that the balance is updated before the payment happens. And so even if you recursively call, it's now 0 and nothing more happens. And so this is how the DAO happened. And it is, in my view, the most significant hack in Ethereum because it split the community into two parts. Why did it happen? Well, because on one side, the community said, you know what, we should roll back the blockchain. We should make this event, we should remove it from history, basically. We should return all the funds to people who lost their funds. Because we're such a new project, and even if the idea is that the code should be law, that the code should be immutable, that it shouldn't be possible to change the code in smart contracts, let's do it this one time and return the funds. And this is the way Ethereum went. But Ethereum Classic, for ideological reasons, said, no, we shouldn't do it, because code is law, code should be immutable, and we shouldn't do anything. And it is unfortunate, but we do not agree with you, and we will not roll back this theft. And so that is the significance of this particular hack. And if you're interested, you can go to my channel and you can see how we reconstruct the whole hack together. It's like a 20-minute video. And of course, here as well, whose fault is it? We're dealing with huge amounts of money. There's no way to find this hacker, really. It's all anonymous. And should we blame the developers? Should we blame the users? Still, the community has to grow, and we don't really have a clear answer for whose fault is it. What I want to make clear here is that whenever we program on the blockchain, we really have to switch our mindset. And although Solidity is very like JavaScript, the mindset should be completely different. With JavaScript, you build websites, you can build apps. With Ionic, it's very easy. You can do these hot fixes. But with the blockchain, there is no way to do hot fixes. It's immutable, it's like a house. And therefore, the mindset has to change. And also, another interesting aspect is this dissonance between the technology and the use cases of this technology. Because Ethereum is still experimental. I mean, the founders of Ethereum are very clear that this is still experimental technology, although, how many of you know what this graph chart represents? This represents how much money is raised in these fundraisers on Ethereum. And as you can see, this is May. Here is May of this year. And as you can see, it has completely exploded during the summer, and people are raising more and more money in these fundraisers because it's really a new way to raise money. And I think this is the future of fundraising for sure, because now anyone all over the world can attract capital to their project and being a part of the global economic system. So for sure, this is the future of fundraising, but when it comes to technology, it is still experimental technology. And also this article from CNBC some months ago stated that initial coin offerings, ICOs, when we talk about ICOs, we talk about this new way of raising money on the blockchain by issuing coins. This way of raising money has already surpassed VC funding in tech when it comes to early investments. So the use cases are huge, and I'm really excited because this is what will bring so many people and make them a part of the global economic system. Because a lot of poverty is because of financial exclusion. So by being included in the global economic system, we make so many people empowered. So long term, I think this is definitely a new way, new paradigm in fundraising. But short term, we have to keep in mind the technical limitations of platforms such as Ethereum. And whenever we're building these smart contracts, we should be thinking like hardware developers, or if we're developing financial applications, not as mobile or web developers, because of immutability, because we're building a house. And this is also a clash of best practices. Whenever it comes to software engineering, what you learn in college and what you learn when you work with software normally, and security. So what are these clashes? For example, monolithic versus modular design. As a software developer, of course, you want to make everything modular so that you can exchange different parts and parts are independent of each other. But it might create unnecessary complexity when you're building smart contracts, and it might introduce new vulnerabilities, new bugs. So monolithic versus modular design is a clash of paradigms. Also, rigid versus upgradable. Of course, we want web applications to be upgradable, so it should be easy to fix, it should be easy to add new features, but we do not want to, for smart contracts to be that upgradable, because the whole idea is that they should be immutable. If we together code a smart contract, we make a deal on the blockchain, and we publish our contract. I shouldn't be able to just go ahead and change it. You shouldn't be able to just go ahead and change it. So another clash of best practices. And finally, duplication versus reuse. Duplication might be great if you're working in normal software, but of course it is extra complexity on the blockchain. And as we saw currently with this library, it can cause a lot of damage when it comes to financial losses or financial funds being frozen, as we currently have experienced. Also, we have to keep in mind that these are all early days on the blockchain. There are no really best practices. We're still learning, and if you read Ethereum documentation, if you're interested in Solidity, if you're interested in trying to program these smart contracts, to trying to program money, you will read that all vulnerabilities haven't yet been discovered. This is still experimental, and you should be prepared for that. And of course, this can be compared with SQL injections, when people just took the input from a form and concatenated it into SQL query without checking. We're still in those days, maybe even before those days. So best practices need to be put in place, and the whole community is very new, very fresh. Meaning that there is still a lot of room to be the expert, to be the guy in your company who knows everything about blockchain, who can do all of these smart contracts. No one except you knows it. So as a professional growth, there's a lot of possibilities. And please be curious, please try it out, experiment. You never know where you will end up. So we talked about this fundraisers, and we also talked about that the financial institutions are moving to the blockchain more and more, are interested in the blockchain. The traditional industry is still are also developing their own solutions, are also very interested in the use cases of the blockchain. And I personally think that 2018, next year, will really accelerate and put blockchain into this very serious industrial use cases. So moving it even more from this hobby activity on the internet, where we just together, we sit, we chat, we do some Bitcoin hacking. Now we are actually seeing industrial use cases of this technology, both in the industry and the financial sector. Because I think many people in finance, for example, for several years have been thinking, if we just, if we just close our eyes and we pretend that the blockchain doesn't exist, maybe it will go away, maybe we don't have to adapt or do anything. But as we saw with the chart, it's just growing, more and more people are using it, more and more possibilities of the blockchain are being discovered, and therefore more and more institutions, more and more industries, more and more organizations are learning and are eager to implement and be at the forefront themselves. So guys, thank you so much for attending this session. This slide is mainly for YouTube. So if you have missed the New York event, if you have missed the Lithuania event, I hope to see you in Singapore in a week or so. Also, if you're interested in blockchain, the technology behind blockchain, the technology behind different blockchain projects, please come to Ivan on Tech on YouTube. Or if you're just interested in blockchain technology, you have your own blockchain ideas, please contact me at contact@ivanontech.com, because as I told you, Stockholm Blockchain, we are investing in blockchain ventures, and we are really pushing this development further. That being said, guys, thank you so much for being here, and that's it for me. Okay, it's on. Perfect. All right, let's take some questions. What's going on with Bitcoin Cash, and should I care? How many of you know about Bitcoin Cash? Few people know about Bitcoin Cash. So in Bitcoin, we have an issue. We have a huge issue, and that is the scaling issue. Basically, the network is getting clogged, the transaction fees are getting higher, and there's a lot of debate, okay, how should we scale this? One bottleneck in this whole infrastructure is the block size. How many transactions can fit in one block. And if we have small block size, this means that there's a lot of competition to get in that block and get your transaction propagated. This means that because there's so much competition, the fees naturally go up. So in Bitcoin, we have this issue now that the fees go up and the network is slow. So some people in the Bitcoin community proposed basically, you know what, let's increase the block size to 2 megabyte with SegWit 2x, or to 8 megabyte with Bitcoin Cash. And the Bitcoin Cash forked, meaning that they basically split the network, and now we have Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, and they increased the block size. So it's different ways to scale Bitcoin. You might be wondering, why don't the original Bitcoin people, Bitcoin Core, why don't they want to raise the block size? Well, because they have another philosophy. They want to implement layer 2 solutions, meaning that instead of doing everything on the blockchain, you and we can establish our own channel, payment channel. And this will work in the following way, that we together will lock up some funds, some Bitcoin on the blockchain. And now that we have locked up these funds, we can do millions of transactions just between each other. And these transactions, they will not be recorded on the blockchain. We can do hundreds, millions, many transactions between each other. And when we close this channel, the difference will be recorded on the blockchain. So it is one philosophy, doing these payment channels. Second philosophy is just increasing the block size and not doing any innovations on top of the original blockchain. And technology is one part of it all. So this is the technological aspect, that one party wants to do layer 2 solutions, one party wants to increase the block size. This is technology. But then we also have the power struggle, which is, I think, also very significant, because Bitcoin Cash, if they succeed in being the #1 Bitcoin, they will, of course, have the control over the development. Their client will be the most popular, meaning that they are the development team. So we have to have both aspects in mind. It's both about the power and control and also about the technology. So that is what is going on with Bitcoin Cash. Should you care? I mean, it depends. I think you should care if you're interested in Bitcoin, because it's so, it's so fundamental. I think it's the 3rd largest cryptocurrency, and it's good to understand the incentives of different parties, of the Bitcoin Core and what they want to achieve, and Bitcoin Cash and what they want to achieve. And we have to keep in mind that behind Bitcoin Cash, there are very powerful people who have billions of dollars that invested early in Bitcoin, and now they have this philosophy of creating Bitcoin Cash and making it popular. So Bitcoin Cash, they have a lot of powerful people backing them. We have other forks as well. How many of you know about Bitcoin Gold? Bitcoin Gold, anyone? Okay, Bitcoin Gold, also another fork. And they said, you know what? Bitcoin is too centralized. Everything is in China, all the mining happens in China. Let's do it more decentralized by changing the hashing algorithm to an algorithm that is only profitable to mine with GPUs. So even if you have these ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits, which people currently use in Bitcoin, because it's basically circuits made for mining in hardware. So it's very efficient. So Bitcoin Gold said, you know what, this shouldn't happen. We shouldn't allow for these hardware implementations of the mining algorithm. Instead, it should only be done on the GPUs, and therefore we make it more decentralized. However, Bitcoin Gold doesn't have many powerful people behind it, and they're also utilizing the fact that many people are new to this field. They don't really know who is behind Bitcoin Gold. They don't really know about the development team, and they don't really care. So if you just fork Bitcoin and you make a claim, the price of that coin might go up. So we have to keep in mind that people are using this aspect of the community, meaning that the community is very new. Even if you make some kind of coin, it might go up in value and make you a multi-millionaire. So Bitcoin Gold, personally, I'm not really into that. Bitcoin Cash could be interesting to see, but personally, I like the idea with layer 2 solutions, payment networks, because it really opens up a whole new world of money applications. Imagine you go to work, and you have your payment channel with your employer, and then you get paid for every second you work. Because these microtransactions, 1 cent a second, it's very impossible now. It's not possible with traditional banking system because the fees would be enormous. But with cryptocurrencies, you can get paid every second with having these payment channels. So that is where I see the future of Bitcoin going forward. But that being said, I don't think there will be just one cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. I think there will be many cryptocurrencies, and we will use many cryptocurrencies. You should read, I highly recommend, if you want, you could read Internet of Money by Andreas Antonopoulos. So you saw Internet of Money in my presentation. There's actually a book called Internet of Money by Andreas Antonopoulos. And just to get the philosophy of this new paradigm of Internet of Money. And so an interesting thing he mentions is that money will be a form of expression. That currently we have no choice. You have to use you have to use the euros, I have to use the crowns in Sweden. But in the future, money will be a form of expression. You like inflationary money, you can use inflationary coins. I like deflationary money, I use my own coins. We will have many currencies and we will be able to choose. A long answer to a question. Do the hackers ever actually cash out these hacked millions, and how? So cashing out is, I imagine you can't really do that currently, because number one, the funds are traceable on the blockchain, so even if you hack, it might be difficult for you to hide them somehow, and also not many banks will be happy if you just send 100 million from nowhere to your bank account. So I don't really know how that works and how you would do that. All right. Day-to-day usage of cryptocurrency is inefficient since transactions are very expensive. Will and how will... so we talked about payment channels. That is how that might be solved. What do you think about the downsides? So the downside of Bitcoin usage is that you have all the responsibility. You have all the freedom. You can transact wherever in the world you want. You don't need to have any documents to start using cryptocurrencies. This will increase financial inclusion, as I mentioned, because suddenly, even if you live in a country without capital, you can have your own bank account kind of as a cryptocurrency wallet, and you can be a part of the global economic system. But it also means that if you send me a lot of money and I lose my private key, there is no way to fetch that money. And there is no customer support. There is no way to get that money back, basically. So that is the biggest downside, is the usability, user-friendliness of these currencies. Many people have mined Bitcoin in the early days when the mining was easy, and then they have, maybe 1,000 Bitcoin on their hard disk, and they lose their private key, and now those Bitcoins they have on the network, they have no private keys to interact with those Bitcoins, and so a usability issue for sure. Okay, what is ICO? ICO is initial coin offering. It is when you issue a new currency, for example, on Ethereum, and when you do that, you can offer it to the public to buy it for Bitcoin or Ethereum or other cryptocurrencies. So that is what an ICO is. And I really see the ICOs maturing more and more. We will have crypto equity, meaning that instead of regular shares currently, shares will be tokens, because these tokens can be programmed to give you voting rights. They can be programmed to give you dividends. They can be programmed to do whatever, because it's programming. You can program whatever you want these tokens to do in your particular organization. So you can basically tailor and design a token for your investors, and we can together write these smart contracts that will handle these transactions for us. So that is what ICOs are, and the future of ICOs and crypto equity. Many speculate that the main use case of Bitcoin is money laundering. How do we... so I think it is a big misconception that Bitcoin is, for example, anonymous. I do think that tax authorities will have no issues taxing Bitcoin. Because it's worse than cash from an anonymity point of view, because all the transactions are public on the blockchain. And taxation has worked with cash without issues, of course with issues, but it has worked with cash. So I see no reason for it not to work with Bitcoin. And I mean, currently the tax authorities, they don't know what is Bitcoin, how it's working, but they will of course learn. They will have the competence needed. The IRS currently, they are acquiring startups to do blockchain analysis and to analyze transactions, to track people. So I don't really see an issue when it comes to taxes in the Bitcoin space. They will figure it out. And if you imagine, currently Bitcoin is at $7,000. Imagine when Bitcoin is 20,000, 30,000. Tax authorities will have millions, hundreds of millions, to collect, even more. So of course they will figure it out for sure. And as I said, it's easier to do and to track money on the blockchain than it is to track cash. So definitely that will be solved. Fake ICOs are going to eat Ethereum price. What do you think? So I'm not sure what you mean with fake ICOs. Many ICOs are very non-serious, so to speak. We have a wild, wild west of ICOs. People are basically doing a PDF, and they're telling that our project is going to be great, buy our token. And people buy, and they do nothing. So we have a wild, wild west, and it is because it's a whole new paradigm, and people are using and profiting from the immaturity of the community and investors. About the Ethereum price, I'm not sure the connection there. I mean, the ICOs, they will need to cash out sooner or later. That's why you do an ICO, so maybe in that way. What is library and how do wallets depend on it? So library is functionality that the wallet itself doesn't have in its code, so it needs to reference logic is located somewhere else on the blockchain. How does regular Ethereum user without knowledge of Solidity okay, so this is an amazing question, because lawyers will need to have computer science backgrounds in the near future, because business will be done on the blockchain, because we have no intermediaries. Everyone in the whole world is a part of the global economic system. And of course, if you and I set up a smart contract, we program it together, and you're not a programmer, there is a chance that you might be tricked. So we will have lawyers who do smart contracts on Ethereum, on the blockchain, some other platforms as well. And they will need to be proficient in Solidity or in some other language if some other platform is bigger than Ethereum in the future. So currently you need to be a programmer, and we will have lawyers to do that in the future, for sure. Or we will have drag and drop contract building with easy interfaces. Okay, after the hack, do people that had money in Ethereum doubled the amount they own since they... okay, so when a fork happens, for example, when Ethereum and Ethereum Classic happened, if you had 10 Ether, you now have 10 Ether Classic. So you get the same number of tokens in the new currency as well. When Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash happened, if you had 10 Bitcoin, now you have 10 Bitcoin Cash as well. So... but the price, I mean the actual price and how much money you have, it's all depending on the market, how much the new coin is worth. And yeah, technically you get 2 coins. Could blockchain technology be a good alternative for certain? So blockchain technology is perfect for proving that you invented something or that you owned something, because on the blockchain we can put transactions such as Bitcoin transactions, money transactions, but we can also put files. So if you have some kind of invention, put it on the blockchain if you want to patent it. Then you know for sure it will be there forever. Only you will have the private key to that, and you can verify that you were the person that uploaded that file, or that maybe you don't upload the whole file, maybe you only upload the hash. You can solve it in different ways. So definitely this is a good use case of the blockchain, proving existence, proving identity, proving ownership. And in fact, in Sweden, our land registry could potentially be moved to the blockchain. They're currently working on it. And this is the perfect use case of the blockchain, moving the land registry, for example, to the blockchain so that everyone, because it's public information. Why shouldn't public information be on the blockchain? There is no reason for that. And so I think in the future, it will just become a standard that the UN or the international community will accept blockchain as a standard when you run a country. Because if you have a country and you don't have your public data on the blockchain, why is that? Do you have something to hide? Why don't you put it on the blockchain so that we have it in an append-only immutable database? Because blockchain is append-only, and no one can change it, meaning that it will fight corruption, and thus also bringing many people from poverty as well. So we were talking about, so the ownership, the existence, and those are very, very good use cases of the blockchain for sure. Okay, one big use as much energy as house. How do we avoid? So, I mean, this is, many people talk about the fact that we currently have relatively few users in the blockchain, in the Bitcoin community, but there is so much energy being wasted. And people are very scared that what happens when the user base grows and we have hundreds or thousands more users in the Bitcoin network. Will the energy increase as well? Well, no, because the energy is independent from the amount of users. The users, we can the energy is only used to secure the network. It's for the security reasons, to make it computationally impossible to crack the network. And we can have hundreds or thousands more users using the blockchain with today's energy spending, energy amount. So this is number one, that energy is not dependent on the number of users. And number two is that if you think about like Google, Amazon, all of these companies have huge data centers as well. If you think about all the infrastructure that the banks have, ATMs, they all have huge data centers as well. So it's all about the perspective you're looking from. And number three is that, of course, in the blockchain community, we realize this problem, and the blockchain community wants to be green. And we have other consensus algorithms, such as proof of stake, where there is no energy usage at all. So in Ethereum, for example, they will switch to proof of stake. When we use energy as incentive, we use proof of work, that you mine, you produce a hash that works, and this is how you prove that you have your skin in the game. So this is proof of work. Proof of stake, you lock up your money, and this is how you prove that you have your skin in the game. Because we have to understand what is mining. How many of you know why we have mining? Okay, some people know. Mining, basically, it is to incentivize everyone. We have no central bank, we have no central server, so how do we make sure that everyone is honest and that everyone plays by the rules? Well, we make those people spend a lot of energy so that they want to get paid for that energy. They want to get the reward, the mining reward. And if they are dishonest, if they cheat the network, they will not get the reward, meaning that they have invested all this money, all this hardware in computers and everything, and now they will not get their return on investment. So this is how we incentivize people currently. You spend a lot of money on energy, on hardware, and you are honest because you want to get the reward. This is proof of work in Bitcoin currently. Proof of stake is the following, that instead of burning all the energy, instead of buying computers, instead of doing all of that, instead you lock up a significant amount of your money, and this way you tell the network, you know guys, I'm honest because I have locked up all this money, meaning that if I am dishonest, if I try to trick the network, I will lose this money, the network will take it from me. But if I am honest, I will get the transaction fees and mining reward for locking up this money. So this is called virtual mining. We don't use any hardware, we don't use electricity, we just lock up the money. And proof of work is where you use electricity and mine using hardware. Okay, guys, I think this was the last question. Thank you so much for the many questions and everything.